Yeah, let's go back to the first page, Matthew. Just
Yep.
one.
Okay. There you go.
So we're back here, 51,980. If you want to be buying a new car, now this can apply to any new car. We're using a Tesla, obviously, because we love the company, and also the tax incentive is there. And the cherry on top is the savings in gas of 6,000. Now, I save about 4,000, 5,000 a year in gas since I bought this car, close to 5,000. So estimating that 6,000 over 4 years is extremely conservative. Okay. So you'll probably get a lot more than that. Now let's keep going, Matthew.
You got it. There we
Okay,
go.
so in year one, we're going to take the 51,980 plus taxes that we paid for the vehicle, right? That amounts to in Ontario $58,737.40. We're going to take that and we're going to put it in RSP. And again, think of the traditional way of buying a car. Traditional way of buying a car is you go to the dealership and you either lease or finance. Very rarely does someone actually pay for a car cash. They'll usually lease or finance that vehicle. So we're going to do it this way. We're going to go and buy the car cash. So either you have to have either cash or a line of credit available to you. Now you can
And
pick.
let's face it, a lot of people are going to be using a line of credit.
Yeah,
Like
and there's something. Yeah,
like
and
that.
I've used in the past. I've used a line of credit.
Yeah.
So
Or
we're
maybe
gonna.
it's a combination, right? Maybe it's like it's a $58,000, $52,000 car. Maybe it's like $25,000 cash or $10,000 cash, and the remainder of the line of credit. So we gotta have to factor that one in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple ways of doing it. Now you can either go to a bank and they'll probably give you 90% of the loan value, which is $46,782. You could do that. You can go to like TD Bank or Royal and say, hey, I have this paid off car. I'd love to get a loan against it. If you have good credit and stuff, it's not generally too big of a problem. Now we want to put that $58,000 into our RSP. So let's go to April. 58,000 is placed into our RSP, and let's say we're at the 43.41 tax bracket, 43.41%. That will give us a tax refund of $25,497. Now we have the 58,000 in there, plus now we have the 25,000 there. So we have a total of roughly $84,000 in there. Okay. Now, what we want is a linear rate of return. Now, and here I put this because I did this for a client of ours. You want something that is not going to be very volatile. And what I mean by a linear rate of return, in this case, I used a MIC, so a mortgage investment corporation, where you paid about 9-10% just for lending money out on second mortgages. Now, again, you have to be A, comfortable with that investment, okay, and B, you have to be okay lining that up for 4 years, okay? So you're going to put that money in. Now you've got 25,000 plus you got your 58,000 that went into your RSP. Great. You got a loan or you're using a line of credit. So that is a wash. I got a question before is, well, hey, I'm going to pay interest on that loan. Yeah, well, you would have paid interest if you bought the car via a lease or finance anyways. Now, 84,235 has gone into the RSP at year one, on year one. Now, at an investment rate of 10%, and that's what we're going to use for this purpose. And you might be looking a little higher, a little bit lower in a MIC. And again, I'm not suggesting use a MIC. I'm just use something that gives you a linear fixed rate of return, okay? At the end of year one, we have $92,658.84. So far, pretty good, right? Now, keep in mind, we did contribute $25,497 to RSP. So let's go to year two.
Oh, sorry. There you go.
Okay, so now we're starting off with $92,000 in year two. And again, we're assuming that same 10% linear rate of return. We want to keep this vehicle for a period of 4 years. That's a decent time horizon, right? Now, your car could last a little bit longer, and that's fine, but generally, your warranty expires after 4 years. Now, keep in mind, we did put in $25,000 into our RSP the previous year, right? $25,497. That amounts to a tax refund, a further tax refund of 43.41%, and that gives us another $11,068 as a tax refund, okay? So we got $25,000 as a tax refund in year two. In year two, we took that same $25,000, we threw in RSP again. And now we have an additional $11,000 in change in RSP. So that gives us a total of $92,658.84 plus the $11,068.84 if you can move to December. That gives us a total of $103,754.48. Now we want to times that by 1.1 again, linear rate of return. Okay. Now, at the end of year 2, the value of RSP is now $114,100.23. Now, you can look up the tax brackets. The highest tax bracket, so the more income you make in Ontario, and we're using Ontario as a specific example, this will be even more beneficial to you. So I've used someone making between 106,717 up to 150,000. If your income is higher, even better. Okay, let's move on to year 3.
Okay.
So now we're driving this car around. We're not paying any gas. We're saving $4,000 or $5,000 a year in gas. We have $114,000 in RSP. Things are looking pretty good for us. Now, starting value, $117,000. Now, keep in mind, last year, again, we're going to file our taxes, and we put in $11,068.64 into our RSP last year, right? Again, we're at the 43.41 tax percent bracket, and that assumes we are going to get another tax refund of $3,774.19. What are we going to do with that? Oh, we're going to throw it in our RSP yet once again. Okay. So at the end, if we move to December, at the end of the year, we put 114,000 starting off the year. We got an additional 3,700 and change in a tax refund. That amounts to $117,874.42. And we times that by the 10% a year. And I understand, by the way, guys, that the RSP contribution is made in April. It's not subject to the full 1.1%, but just for simplicity purposes, I'm using 1.1%. Oh, sorry, 1.1 as in 10% for the year, for the entire year. We very much underestimated the gas savings, so that will more than make up for it. Okay. Now, if that $117,874.42 grows again, at the end of the year, we'll have a balance of $129,661.86 based off a 10% rate of return. Okay, so now we're going on to year 4 of our car. Okay, we're going to start off at $129,000. Matthew, let's go to year 4. $129,661.86. Year 4, Matthew.
I'm trying. There you go. Sorry, the cursor wasn't working. There you go.
Okay, so $129,661.86. Okay, that is year 4. Again, we're going to file our income tax in April. We made a contribution to our RSP last year of $3,774.19. This gives us a further tax refund of $1,638.38. Fantastic. Now, at the end of the year, we have $129,661.86 plus the $1,600 that we got in a tax refund. Again, we times that by 10%. And now we have a value of $144,430.26 at the end of year 4. Now we're like, our warranty is coming to an end. Let's get rid of this car and let's rinse and repeat. Now let's take a look at what happens when we finally decide to get ourselves a new car. So let's go to the next slide, please, Matthew.
You got it. Withdrawal strategy. There you go.
Larger withdrawal strategy. So we have $144,000 and change. 144,430. That's based upon all the tax refunds we got every year, all the RSP contributions we made. Because a lot of people, like myself, I don't use my RSP. I'll use it for this because I don't plan on being poor when I retire. So I don't want to get taxed at a full tax bracket. I'd rather have it used now, making me money now. So 144,000. Now we're going to have to withdraw that at the end of year 4 because we're going to have to buy a new car. Now, $72,215.13. I'm assuming we're at a marginal tax bracket of 50%. So 50% will go to our partners in the government, and I'm sure they'll do wonderful, magical things with it. And
they're going to enhance the landlord-tenant board. That's what they're going to do.
So yeah. I'm sure they'll find a creative way to spend it. So 50% goes to our silent partner, and 50% we keep. Okay.
Yep.
Now, remember that the car does have some sort of value. It's a 4-year-old car. Let's say it has 80,000 kilometers or so, or 85 or whatever it may be, 90,000, whatever, how much you drive. Well, the car we're going to sell, or we can trade it in. Right now, the benefit of trading in a car is that if you trade in a car and let's say it's $25,990, well, you get the tax benefit on top of that. So that comes off the pre-tax total. So if you're buying another car, let's say you're buying another car for 50 grand. Well, it would be 50,000 minus 25,990, and you would only pay tax on the $24,010. You know, that's the benefit of trading cars. So there's a tax benefit to trading a car. So ideally, I know the dealerships normally host people when they trade their cars in, but keep in mind there is that 13% boost here on Ontario. You want to look at trading this vehicle in. Residual value at the end of year 4, $25,990 plus the $72,000 that we have after our RSP withdrawal. So in our bank account, after we traded the car in, after we've withdrawn the RSP and depleted it to zero, we have $98,205.43. Now, what we want to do is, let's say we had a loan for the vehicle. We could pay that loan off, okay? So net gain after we paid off, okay? And again, keep in mind, if you lease or finance, you'd have a loan anyways. We gained, using this strategy, $39,468.43. That is a very nice spot to be in. Now, again, if we had bought the Tesla and we're saving $5,000 a year on gas and virtually having no maintenance, essentially, that car wound up being free for us.
Yep.
So it's a really good spot to be in. Now, at the end of year 4, guess what we do? Well, we say this strategy worked out really well for us. I'm going to do it again. So the two things that you have to have RSP room and you have to have a willingness to invest in the strategy. So at the end of year 4, we're going to take our car, trade it in, withdraw the money out of RSP, and we're going to go car shopping, and we're going to get ourselves a new car. Now, you could stretch this out to 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. If you do that, it becomes even more beneficial. This is just an example. You can do it every 4 years. I've done this in the past. I didn't do it this time because we got the deduction on the business side. But this is a great way of buying a car. So yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, let us know. Let's go on to the next slide, Matthew.
Sure. Now, I mean, like Omar, that's on this slide. Like, if you wanted to keep your Tesla or whatever car for 10 years, right?
Yeah, you could.
You could, and then the gains get a little bit better, right? This is assuming you want to refresh every 4.
Yeah, the gains get a lot better. Matthew, if you could comment tax-wise, if I were to make contributions, let's say I have $300,000 in RSP room in my account, okay?
Yep.
And I make contributions of $80,000 or so, or $100,000,
Yep.
and then I withdraw it all. Do I have $200,000 of contribution limit left? Because I'm picking it all out again. Or am I back to the same 300,000 again?
Yeah, I think you'll have the same contribution room again. But like, you're gonna be taxed. I mean, like, if you go back, if like this here, a lot of this like, if you are self-employed and you're gonna do this, I'm gonna suggest you don't pay yourself too much from your company, right? Of course, if you're not self-employed and you're a T4 like employee, then you don't have a choice of this, because then, you know, you want to make sure that this is as low as possible, right? Because this is a hefty amount. Your marginal tax is capped out at like 255,000, and the marginal tax bracket is over 50%. It's like 54 or 55%.
53.53.
Yeah, it's high. Like,
well, we've already assumed 50%, Matthew.
Yeah,
so
you already assume. Just there's ways to manage this, right? You know, with and there are other kind of tax considerations, right? Like, you know, the rate of return could vary. It could do very well. You might be hitting the ball out of the park in terms of your returns of your investment vehicle. You know, if you go back to if we go back a few slides when we're assuming the 10% rate of return, you know, if your risk tolerance is one that suggests that, listen, I can take on more risk. Now, I know you're assuming you need this money to go and finance your next vehicle, but then obviously this makes a lot more sense if it's like, okay, not 10%, maybe it's 12 or 15% or what have you, right? 10% is kind of I think Omar might have used that because rates are high right now, and on top of that, that the long-term average of the S&P is about 10% as well. So it's a fair number, right, in any given environment. So there's other considerations as well.
4
What's
years
that?
4 years in the stock market can be, you know, up and down. You just kind of don't know what you're going to get.
You don't know.
Stock market, you have to have a longer term horizon. For this particular investment, you want to use a more linear rate of return, like I said. So find something that gives you a annualized constant rate of return. Now, if you ratchet this number down, let's say to 8%, and you stretch it out over 5 years, the numbers are very, very similar. So it all depends on what your risk tolerance is, what your time horizon, etc. But the point is, if you're going to buy a car in Ontario or Canada, this is the way to buy the car. Now, let's keep going, Matthew. We're going to make some assumptions. Now, what assumptions do we have here? Let's keep going.
And obviously, I mean, this is one of the top tier cars, like preferably something under $100,000, guys, because the luxury tax, that's another cost.
Okay, so we have to make sure we have a line of credit available to purchase the car, right? Now we buy the car cash, and then we get a car loan, okay? We can go to TD, we can go to Royal. There's lots of different financiers, or we can simply use an available line of credit. Now, keep in mind, if you use a line of credit, credit utilization hurts your credit score. So if you have $100,000 line of credit and you're using 60,000, it's going to be a bit more impactful. So there is that consideration as well. So ideally, what you'd like to do, because the lending system here doesn't make any sense whatsoever, in my opinion, if you get a loan from TD Bank or Royal, as an example, it's far less impactful to your credit than if you were to use a line of credit for 60,000. So ideally, you'd like to go to one of the leasing or financing companies. There's a lot of third-party ones as well. Say, hey, I've got this car paid off. Love to get a loan against it. Your credit's good. Yes. All right. Fantastic. The basic strategy is we're going to throw that money into our RSP instead of just buying the car cash. So that way we're generating a deduction, especially for you guys who aren't using your RSP. And every single year, every tax refund we get, we throw it right back into the RSP every year and let that money just compound and grow. Okay. Now, as Matthew was saying, if you're self-employed, this is even better. So the year that you withdraw it, you want to have your income as low as possible so that when you withdraw it, you're at a lower income bracket, right? Now, you take the tax deductions, like I said, put it back every year, assuming a 10% growth rate. Now, you can change these numbers around at 9% or 8% or whatever you feel comfortable with. It all depends on risk tolerance. Now, calculate tax deductions on interest paid each year, and that really won't amount to anything in the strategy, so we'll skip that one. Sell the funds out of RSP. Use it to pay back the line of credit, or use it to pay back the rest of the loan. Because generally speaking, you don't want a loan for 4 years. If you get a loan for RBC or TD or whoever, you can go up to 8 years. Okay, so there'll be a balance on that loan. Yeah, you've paid it down over time, but there'll be a balance on that loan. So that number at the end, when you have to pay it back, will be lower. So you want to pay that loan back and get it up. At the end of the year, you sell your car. We're assuming 50% depreciation, 50% residual value. It may be higher or lower depending on the car you buy, but that's roughly it. Now, the reason we're using a Tesla is because we don't want to pay for gas. Maintenance costs are almost nil. And then guess what we do again? Rinse and repeat over and over and over again. It's a great strategy to buy a car. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any further questions, let us know. Matthew, can we stop the screen share and we'll take some questions?
Sure.
First question is from Lorianne. Is any of the money coming out? Or are we paying the car loan with additional funds? If you could just elaborate a bit, Lorianne. Is any of the money coming out, or are we paying the loan with a car additional funds? So you only really have to fund it in the first cycle that you do it. After that, you should have excess funds every single refresh cycle, and you get to do it over and over again. John Sun, where did you guys learn this from? I learned it from a gentleman named Michael Lee Chin. I worked for Michael Lee Chin for a number of years, and I thought it was fascinating. I'm like, wow, what a strategy. And that's one of the reasons he's a billionaire. It's understanding how the tax system works, how to be financially literate, how money works. So that's where I learned it from Michael Lee Chin, one of my days at AIC. Lorianne says, I see the net gain of almost 40K. Where is showing the payment of the bank loan? So at the end of the day, you have roughly $92,000 left over after you sell your car and you withdraw your, I think it was 92 or whatever it was. The $40,000 is left over after you pay the full price of the vehicle off. So let's just say you take a line of credit and all you do over time is just pay interest only. Just pay off the interest. At the end of the 4 years, you got to pay the balance of the loan off. Now, if you get a bank loan, you'll have probably taken about half of that off. So You won't be paying 58,000 at the end of the 4 years. You'll be paying a portion of half it, or say. But at the end of the day, you're going to have roughly $40,000 left over in each scenario in this example at a 43.41 tax bracket. Lorianne says, I was asking an accountant about this a few days ago, although I was unable to completely remember the full strategy. He was saying that CRA flags these loans used to make money. That's not correct. No, there's nothing illegal about this. There's nothing offsides about it. Matthew, you're an accountant. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, listen, like, there's nothing specifically, against the tax code here. Like, you're buying a car, that's one decision, and you're allowed to buy a car however you want, right? And you decided to buy it in cash, use your line of credit. And then if you want to contribute to your RSP, that's a separate decision. Now, you can take all the benefits and the cons about that decision into account. Like, one con is that the interest cost is not deducted. The interest cost that you're paying the bank on the car loan on the borrowed money to buy the car, that's not deductible in this case, right? So, but like you see other benefits throughout the presentation. So that being said, is anything necessarily wrong with this? No. However, you could get, the CRA has a lovely rule called GAAR, GAAR, that's General Anti-Avoidance Rules. And, it could say, okay, well, this is only a tax loophole and we're going to hit you with GAAR, like General Anti-Avoidance Rules. But I mean, that's a far cry out. You don't do this strategy and the next tax year they say, okay, well, here's your tax bill, right? It's a very, very, very long drawn out strategy, and I deem it as unlikely. I'm not too sure how you'd even flag this, because
I was going to ask, how there are two separate transactions. One is
how do you I don't know, how do you
one is I'm
flag
contributing
this?
to my RSP. They don't know that I'm using this to pay off my loan, so I wouldn't see. They're two separate things altogether. Again, I've done this in the past, so I don't see how the CRA can come back and say, "Yeah, you did it to buy a car." Well, what if I just did it normally? What if I just did it regardless? I'm allowed to contribute to my RSP, am I not? I'm
Yeah,
allowed
the
to
only way
pay off my
the only way
RSP,
to
am I
get
not?
flagged possibly is if they say, okay, well, in year 4 or 5, whenever you make the withdrawal, it's like, okay, well, why was the withdrawal made? Okay, and then what are you doing after that? Like, it's not an immediate thing. Yeah, are you susceptible to general anti-avoidance rules? Yes, but you're susceptible to that on any tax strategy that you implement, which is exactly how it's termed: general anti-avoidance rules. It can't, and the reason I said that again and very slowly is because it is meant to cast the net like super, super, super wide, right? So again, no guarantees here. I think it'll be unlikely, but who knows what goes on to the CRA's algorithm? But it's certainly not immediate, right? And they're separate transactions. It's like you're allowed to these, like, the government has provided a sandbox in which for us to play, and it says don't go outside of the sandbox. And this is not outside of the sandbox. And if the CRA wants to make that opinion, well, they can, but it'll take a long, long time to do. I don't think it's all that likely on day one, but like, yeah, that's kind of my commentary there, right? And they're gonna have to prove that, oh, well, you took this money out because it was part of because you just didn't want to pay tax, and then what are you doing with the money? It's a long drawn out, like, it's a long drawn out process there.
My answer would be, am I not allowed to contribute to my RSP? Am I not allowed to withdraw from my RSP? My car purchase is totally separate. I could be using it to buy, pizza. It doesn't. That's not
you
their
can use it
problem.
by pizza, exactly.
I'm using this to lower my tax base, which is exactly what the RSP is meant for. Now, Lorraine, you should consult your accountant, explain the strategy in detail. Just anecdotally, I've known people who've used it multiple times in the past, and I've never heard of an instance. Now, what the CRA and any revenue, so they want to avoid, like, you remember a few years ago when you had this donate your car, a $2,000 car, and they give you a $10,000 deduction. Those type of things are not, those things I think are not good. That's something that's probably going to get you in a lot of hot water. This is, again, I am simply making RSP contributions, which I'm allowed to do, and I'm going to withdraw it every 4 years, which I'm allowed to do. Now, what I use those for, that's my business, not your business. I'm using those to buy a vehicle because that's what I want to do. at the end of the day, it's simply using your RSP as a tax strategy. Lorian, I mean, on top of paying for the car in full, are we paying still monthly for the car loan? Well, if you're buying the car cash, no, there's an opportunity cost to that. Now, again, when you initially buy the car for $58,000 and change, you have two ways of doing it. One, you can take a bank loan. Hey, my car's paid off, give me a loan. In which case, yes, you will be making a monthly payment. But the point is, we'll be making a monthly payment if we're leasing or financing anyways. So after 4 years, let's say you have an 8-year car loan. After 4 years, let's say it's gone down considerably. Great. So at the end of the 4 years, you'll pay less of a balance because you've been paying the whole way. Or B, you can take a line of credit and just pay the interest only. There's two different ways of doing it. At the end of the 4 years, bottom line is you're going to be substantially on top, which is fantastic. So, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it made sense. We're going to post it to YouTube. It's these little things that if you understand,